Now I get appreciate and totally understand that my viewpoint sometimes when it comes to quarterbacks and when it comes to draft prospects as a whole seem to diverge quite a bit from the established consensus or the norms. Great. I don't want to blend in. I don't want to be like everybody else. And for you guys out there, when you're trying to determine like who's right, who's wrong, what to believe or what not to believe, like if anything, I give you something to think about. Those others that might feel differently from me give you something to think about, and you can kind of come up with your own story and piece it together. But sometimes, like to me, there's going to be preferences and styles and different things where we can have disagreement. And then there's sometimes I just look at some prospects and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck everybody sees. Because everything that they might say in the positive, I can point to a negative element or more to counteract that. Like if you think about a couple of years ago, remember draft Twitter was really high on Josh Rosen. And I was getting clowned a little bit for saying that he was a bum. A couple of years later, he was proven to be a bum. It happens sometimes. Like a few years back when I was really, really hot on Solomon Thomas. Whoopsie daisies. Others were not as hot on him, or some were just as hot. You know, sometimes you miss. But to me, like I looked at Josh Rosen, and I just couldn't see what anybody saw in him that made you think that he was worth a top 10 pick in the draft. And 3 years later, I certainly feel validated and vindicated with that. And so when I look ahead to this potential 2022 quarterback class, you know, there are going to be some names that I feel are getting about the right amount of attention and respect, some that are a little unheralded or a little under the radar. And then you're going to get guys like Kedon Slovis that I'm going to look at and say, what the hell is everybody talking about? What the hell do they see? Like, I expect and understand that clowns like Colin Cowherd are going to talk about him being the best quarterback or QB1, you know, talk about it being a special talent, because we know Colin Cowherd and guys like him don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, you and I can have differences of opinion. It doesn't mean that we don't know what we're talking about. But we can point to him and legitimately say, more often than not, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And he's not even saying these things in a Skip Bayless type of way to try and get a reaction. Like, he legitimately believes his own bullshit, which is probably the worst damn thing. But I've seen others, too, talking about he's a first-round talent or even, like, you know, first to second-round talent, and I just don't see it. What the hell is there that is so special, so elite, so transcendent, so unique about him? The answer to me is not much. I'm not trying to rag on him to say that he can't grow or he can't improve or he can't get better. Hell, you know, 7-8 months from now, I could be talking about him being a first-round pick. Could be talking about him being QB 1, 2, or 3. But right now, as it stands, Slovis looks much more like a mid-round pick than he does a first-round pick. I mean, he's got good size and build for the position. I'll give him that, you know, which is helps him stand out a little bit for some of the other notable quarterback prospects in this class. Like the quarterbacks in this draft are all mostly on the smaller side. So he stands out a little bit because he's a little bit closer to kind of the prototype. One thing I really do like about Slovis's game, and I do want to make sure I give this the right amount of attention, is his high-level pocket feel and presence. He stays tough in the pocket. He's got a really good internal clock. He can move and buy time within the pocket, like really high-level stuff. You know, some of these guys like him, like Desmond Ridder, have really, really good pocket presence. Others just don't. And sometimes you can coach that up, and sometimes you can't. Like that, when you talk about pocket presence sometimes, like, it's interesting because that's one of those things we don't talk about enough, but a lot of times that's why guys fail. Because they're fucking scared in the pocket. They're worried. They're too aware of where the blitz is coming from, etc. But his pocket presence is and feel for being in the pocket and staying alive within the pocket is very high level for his age. Ball placement is pretty good to the short and intermediate areas. Like it's above average. His accuracy is more than serviceable if you're trying to project like NFL traits. It's not special, but his short intermediate area accuracy, ball placement is pretty solid. I also like for a guy that's not the most athletic, he does a good job of squaring his shoulders to throw well on the move. You know, you could tell he's not a superstar athlete or anything, but he has some functional athleticism that allows him to, when he's rolling out, be able to extend plays just a little bit, to be able to square his shoulders and throw on the move. He also shows the ability to work through and back on his progressions. You know, again, it's not just going from 1 to 2 to 3. It's about the quickness, the alacrity, to use Al Michaels' phrase, of going from 1 to 2 to 3, and then sometimes being able to go from 1 to 2 to 3, back to 1, back to 3. You know, he did show some ability in 2020 to do that. But as I look at him, like, there's a lot of questions here. I don't think his 2020 was all that impressive. He's got mediocre arm strength, which you don't have to have a cannon to succeed in the NFL. I agree with that. But when you're talking about taking guys like him in potentially the first round, like, you got to be concerned if they lack elite physical tools. Now, you can make up for that by saying, hey, the guy's field vision is otherworldly, his pocket presence is top-notch, his accuracy, his ball placement, his ability to throw with anticipation, his leadership. Like, you see what I mean? You can point to other things that can help compensate for that lack of pure arm strength, like a Joe Burrow type. But he's got a weak arm, and he can't really move all that well. That doesn't bode well for Slovis in terms of when you're thinking about first-round prospects. In particular, he's got this horrible hitch, or at least he did. I know he's working on it this summer with Jordan Palmer, and we'll see what happens in 2021. I think this is a big root of the problems. He's got a bad hitch in his throwing motion that leads to a lag in his release. It's almost like you're fucking around in the backyard and you get ready to throw the football, and then for some reason you throw it like a dart. It's just a really odd, funky-ass throwing motion. Like, he comes back and it starts to look good, but then you see like the ball in the arm is lagging way behind his body, and he's not generating additional velocity. In fact, it's sapping the throws that he has of some of the velocity that they need. It's just really weird. Like, even when you're going and watching him, especially when you talk about the deep throws, that's where the mediocre arm strength comes in. On top of the bad hitch, which leads to an elongated release. Like, you're anticipating based off of when he throws starts his throwing motion that the ball might be here. And reality is it's only here because he's got this long hitch. It looks hideous. He's got average at best athleticism for the position. He's not much of a running threat. Like I say, he's got a little bit of a functional mobility and athleticism, enough to be able to buy some time in the pocket, get out of trouble a little bit, extend plays a little bit, but it's certainly not going to be a calling card for him in college or especially at the NFL level. He's had arm injuries at the end of 2019 and 2020. Like at the last game of the year, he hurts his throwing arm both times. Starts to make you wonder, like, how well he's going to be able to hold up his durability. Question also, he continues to hurt his shoulder and his throwing arm. Like, you start to wonder, like, for a guy that already lacks arm strength, like, how much more is he going to lose? And does that really knock him down a pedestal in terms of where you project him as a prospect? He's also slow at times to kind of recognize and react to what he sees. Like I said, going through and talking about field vision, there's one thing to be able to go through your progressions, but then there's another piece talking about being able to read and react to what you see, anticipate what you see, trust what you see. And he had some times where he struggled with that, admittedly, in 2020. So when I come and I look at this guy, and I look so far at some of the other prospects that I've watched for this next year's draft class, and I look at Slovis, I don't see a first-round talent. I don't see a second-round talent. Frankly, right now, I don't see a guy that you draft on the first 2 days. I see somebody that you maybe more so draft in the fourth round. He's got some starter experience at a major program. He's got some good traits, but he doesn't have any elite or special traits. He feels more like a long-term backup in the league type of guy than he does some type of franchise-changing starter. Like, admittedly, maybe if you're a USC fan, you have a bias or a loyalty towards him. Maybe you think that he's better, but I mean, tell me, what do you see out of Slovis that says, God damn, this dude can be that dude? Like, when you're watching a guy, and you're talking about a quarterback in particular, and you're talking about wanting to draft him anywhere in the first round, and especially in the top half of the first round, let alone top 10, top 5, top 1, 2, or 3, like, he better have something or a couple of somethings that jump off to you and say, man, this fucking dude can do it. Like, it's obvious, it's clear. I see that potential with a couple of the other guys in this draft class, even though they have some work to do. I don't see any of those elements here. It doesn't exist. This feels more like career middle to high level backup than it does long-term franchise starter. Now, he could come out in 2021, improve his mechanics, show that he's healthy, get a full season underneath him, which he didn't get in 2020, and maybe he'll show more. But right now, when you're asking me about Slovis' stock, based off of what I've seen, especially in 2020, I'd be selling that shit. Ain't no way in hell right now this is a first-round talent.